Shabbat Shalom, happy Sabbath. Our subject today is the remnant of Yah's people. The remnant of Yah's people. Over time, many people have laid claims to this title, they being the remnant of Yah's people. And so this morning we want to look at that, and in so doing to study the scholarly polemics of the Jewish Khazars. The reason behind that is that there is a belief that is quite pervasive that many of the people today in Israel, they are not so much the seed of Abraham, but they are Khazarians who had taken the religion of Judaism and have made it their own and have laid claims to being a Jew. This morning, soberly, we don't want to proselytize that idea, but we want to go into the Word of Yah and to ascertain quite clearly what the Word says. In our discourse this morning, we will borrow from scholarly Jewish people who have made comments in relation to the subject of our study this morning, to hear what they have said and to measure it against the Word of Yah, who is the final arbiter on matters of truth. So I would like for you to turn with me firstly to the book of Yeshayahu. That's, when we anglicize him, we call him Isaiah. And we're going to be reading from the 11th portion this morning, starting at verse 10. And it shall be on that day, there shall be a root out of Yeshayahu, that's Jesse, which shall stand as a banner, an ensign of the people unto him. The Gentiles shall seek, and his rest shall be esteemed. His rest shall be glorious. And it shall come to pass in that day that Yahweh shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people. That's our subject this morning. Which shall be left from Ashur, that's Assyria, and from Mitzrayim, Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, including Ethiopia and Sudan, and from Elam, Iran, and from Shinar, which is Babylon, from Amath, and from the islands of the sea. Who knows whether that's the Caribbean and elsewhere. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Yehudah from the four corners of the earth. As we read this passage of Isaiah chapter 11, our faces this morning are dimpled by the expressions of joy, even as we grimace at the prophet's assertion. And as this room hums in the ambience of pensive thoughts, As we reflect, we come to understand that despite the years of misplaced identity and dishonor of Yah's people, people treating them as disposable napkins, Yah says, I'm going to stretch my hand again a second time and retrieve the remnant of Israel. We read and we understand the complicity of the people, not their innocence. And we grimace of the destruction that is about to fall upon the earth as Yah clears the way to gather the people again a second time, meaning that a second Exodus is on the way. So this morning we want to look at the scattered remnant of Yah's people and the regathering of them. The thought that pervades among scholars and others is that the Eastern European Ashkenazi Jews who migrated to Palestine in the 19th and 20th centuries and who became the largest original people, so to speak, they're not the seed of Abraham. That's the argument. And if we are to listen to Benjamin Friedman is a man who was born in a Jewish family. And if ever you read his Facts Are Facts in 1954, published in 1954, he wants us to know that the Jews, the current Jews in Israel, they are from Khazar stocks and not necessarily from the seed of Abraham. If we read Arthur Koestler, another gentleman, Jewish man who laid claims to being a Jew, in his 13th tribe, 1978, man born in Budapest, he wants us to know also that the current population of Jews in Israel, the majority of them, they are not Jewish people by way of Abraham's seed. If we take Shlomo Sand, who is emeritus professor of history in Tel Aviv University, and his book, The Invention of the Jewish People, The Invention of the Jewish People, his book remained on the bestsellers list in Israel for 19 weeks. So somebody's reading it. He too wants us to know that if certain Jewish communities had distinctive qualities, they were due to history, not biology. He wants us to know that. Behind every act in Israel, identity politics stretches like a long black shadow the idea of an eternal power and race. So say Shlomo Sand. A nation is a group of persons united by a common error about their ancestry and a common dislike for their neighbors. Is perhaps here quoting Carl Deutsch, Nationality and Its Alternatives, 1969. So all three authors here that I have quoted are men who have claimed Jewry. They are all born in Jewish family in terms of today's reckoning. If I were to take Gamal Abdel Nasser, who was the second president of the United Arab Republic, formerly president of the Republic of Egypt, he wants us to know that the Europeans claiming to be Jews are nothing more than Hebrew-speaking Gentiles. On TV, 1952, he stated, "You, the Jews, will never be able to live here in peace because you left here black and came back white. We cannot accept you." I've quoted these men simply to give you an understanding of the polemics that exist, the dilemma that the world is faced in to accept or to reject the word of Yah. And as I indicated earlier, that we have no desire to proselytize the idea that that group or that group is a Jew. Our objective, our main objective this morning is to use the word of Yah to establish clearly who is the remnant of Yah and who are the people that he will retrieve and regather. And as we read Isaiah chapter 11, it became clear that he's going to be bringing the people from Cush, Pathros, from Egypt, from Elam, from the islands of the sea, and I see no mention here of anyone coming from Europe. I'm simply making and sharing an observation. Consequently, that calls into reflection the Balfour Agreement, which in 1917 made a declaration to give a homeland in Palestine to the Jews, which was realized in 1948, the State of Israel. That's the historical part of it. That's the historical part. But I want to look at what happened prior to that, and perhaps the best way is to start in the book of 2 Kings, Melech chapter 17, verses 23 to 28. Come with me there, and the word reads, "Until Yahweh removed Yisrael out of his sight, as he had said by all his servants, the prophet, so was Yisrael carried away out of their homeland to Assyria unto this day. And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon, from Cutha, and from Ava, and from Amath, and from Sepharvaim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel." Understand what's happening here. We know historically that the children of Israel, they were taken in 722 BC, and they were taken to places all over the world. The word here says in Melech Bet, that's 2 Kings 17, is that after they were taken and dispersed among the Gentiles, the king of Assyria, he brought men from Babylon, brought them to Samaria, which is the capital of Northern Kingdom, and so they replaced the children of Israel. They replaced them. So it doesn't surprise me greatly in chapter 4 of the book of Yohanan when the woman at the well came and she was worshiping in the hillside of Gezerim. It doesn't surprise me in the sense that she may well have been a descendant of these people who were brought from Babylon and elsewhere and became residents in Samaria. Yeshua looked at her and said, "Woman, you don't know what you worship. Salvation came first to the Jews. We know what we're doing. And the hour come, and the hour is now, when the true worshipers worship, not so much in Jerusalem, not so much in the hills in Gezerim, but where two or three are gathered in my name, such desires true worshipers." So he laid the foundation for that because the word says in 2 Kings 17 that the people who came from Babylon and elsewhere, they did not know how to worship Yah, and they did not pay respect, obeisance to Yah. In fact, they had to send back to the children of Israel who had been dispersed to find a priest to come and teach them, because Yah allowed lion into their midst that troubled them greatly. We want to be frank this morning, and so it's best to start with Charlemagne. Charlemagne was king of the Franks. He became king in 768. Initially co-ruling with his brother before becoming sole ruler in 771, and in 800 he became emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. Why do I bring that to your attention? Because at that particular time, there was another group of people who had adopted the Judaism and was ruling over that area of land, the Caucasus to the Volga region, the Black Sea area, Russian area, and they had adopted the religion of the Jews, Judah. Their king, King Bulan, was the one who led that movement, and they ultimately became, from what we're made to understand from the scholars, when Britain took them from Europe and brought them to the Palestine, that these are Khazars rather than they are Jews. We want to be scripturally correct rather than listen to what scholars says. And so I cannot emphasize the point more what I said. We cite these men who have made comments, but we would rather treat this as a prima facie case at first instance. What they say gives the impression that what they're saying is true. But we want to look at this intelligently. We want to display intellectual honesty, academic integrity, and divine truth. That's our approach this morning as we look into it. So it makes sense to find out who these remnant people are. who are the dispersed. Turn with me to the book of Stephanus, or Zephaniah as we call him. And we will go to chapter 3, verse 9 and 10. And the word says, "For then will I turn to the people a pure language, and they may all call upon the name of Yah to serve him with one consent from beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, my suppliant, even the daughter of my dispersed, shall bring mine offering." From beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, Cush, my dispersed people will bring me an offering. That's kind of clear. The perspicuity of that needs no clarification. It's self-evident. Very clear that these people represent black people. And the word says they're dispersed. And if we take chapter 1 of the same prophet, he makes it known that his father was Cushi, and he traced his lineage all the way to Hezekiah, letting it know that he's from the house of David. That's Judah. And so we trust the integrity of the scriptures. And we're sticking solely to what the word of Yah says. So let me point you now also to the book of Genesis, Bereshit, chapter 48. You know the story very well, so I will tell it in its brevity. That Joseph went to Egypt. Not willingly, he was sold. And while they're waiting in prison and praying, Yah kept him. He got married to an Egyptian woman, and he had 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. And before his father, who had joined him later in Egypt, Jacob, that's Jacob, Israel, he decided to bless these boys. Come with me to Bereshit 48 and verse 16. And he's explaining his rationale for the blessing and why he's putting his right hand on Ephraim, the younger of the 2, and his left on Manasseh. Because he remembered in his own experience in that he got the blessing over Esau. So he's passing on that as a promise. The angel which redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads, and let my name be named on them, and the name of my fathers, Abraham, Ishak, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. Let's dilate upon that a little. When you read the book of Genesis, you will see that the majority of Jacob's children were born in Padam Aram, Mesopotamia. Perhaps the only one who can lay claim to being born in Palestine or Canaan is Benjamin. My point is that they were not born in Israel, but they were Israelites. Moreover, Jacob here is putting his name on these 2 North African boys, saying, put my name, Israel, on them. Hear me? The only child that was born after he got the name was Benjamin. The others, yes, they are children of Jacob, but Jacob says these two North African boys, they are children of Israel. Understand where I'm going with this. Because we recognize in 722 that when the children of Israel were taken into captivity, it really was 9.5 tribes, because many of the Levites had come down south and was now with the house of David. Remember, Ezekiel was a priest. Ezra, and all these were in captivity. So these North African boys, they received the birthright promise, which is the land, and the scepter, according to Chronicles 5, 1 Chronicles, the scepter was given to Judah, Yehudah. And in Amos 9 and verse 7, Yah makes the point that the Ethiopians are just the same to him as the children of Israel. Are you not the same to me, O you children of Israel, as the Cushites? What is Yah saying? Is he really saying you are the same color or the same belief or both? So Israel, based on the fact that Jacob, grandchildren, their mother was a black Egyptian woman, regardless of what color Joseph was, and we know that he was a man of color, the children would have been of a darker hue. We understand that. So when we talk about Israel, and Yah is going to round up his people in the last days, we must understand what Yah is in fact saying to us today. And we must be wise enough not to be led by the foolishness that often comes out from TV and internet. Let's go to Bereshit again, chapter 10. Remember, Moses, or Moshe, had a sister called Miriam and a brother called Aaron, who was the high priest. They once spoke about Moshe, and it offended Yah, because he had married a Cushite woman, an Ethiopian, and it offended Yah. And perhaps the question needs to be asked, is Yah still offended by racism? Oh, yes. And the word says that he had called them together and asked them, were you not afraid to speak in such racial terms? Moshe, he said, I spoke to him, and I continue to speak to him face to face, whereas I speak to the other prophets in dreams and vision. Were you not afraid? And the word says that Miriam, Moshe's sister, was struck with leprosy and she became white. one asks the question, if she became white, what color was she before? But that's not the central point that I want to bring to your attention here. Chapter 10 of Bereshit, starting at verse 3, and the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, and Riphath, and Togarmah, and the sons of Javan, Elisha, and Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided into their land, every one after his tongue, after their families in their nation. Let me read it again so it doesn't escape your thoughts. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz. Remember, the majority of the people in Israel today, they are of the Ashkenazi stock. And Moshe here is letting you know that Ashkenaz and Rippah and Togarmah and the sons of Javan, Elisha and Tarshish, Kittim and Dodanim, these are Gentiles. Now, this is a man who has taken dictation from Yah. Is taken dictation from Yah. And so it is kind of foolish to listen to some of the stories, whether they are promoted and proselytized by the church or by the media. We must stay with the word of Yah. We must stay with the word of Yahweh. And so I'm going to ask you to join me in the book of Acts, chapter 13. Acts chapter 13. And let's continue our journey as we perambulate through the pages. It reads that these are Yah's disciples. And as you know, they are well-trained disciples, because Yeshua himself had taught them. And they were out witnessing, as we ought to, and the people took note that they had been with Yeshua. They had been with Yeshua. So the word is clear that these men were drawing attention from all over the place. And in the assembly that was in Antioch, there were certain Nebiim, prophets, and teachers, both Barnabas and Shimeon, who was called Niger, and Lucas of Cyrene or Cyrene, and Menahem, who had been brought up with Herod, the strict ruler, and Shaul. They were certain prophets and teachers, both Barnabas and Shimon, who was called Niger. Niger means black. A prophet and or a teacher in the first century assembly. And another man from North Africa called from Cyrene, two among them. The early church, The early assembly, the book of Acts, Dr. Luke record that these men were black. The Niger River runs through Africa. We have a country in Africa called Nigeria. And the word wants you to know that in the early stages of the people, as they walked in the way, and in Antioch they were called Christians, there was a black prophet and teacher among them. And the word goes on to say, and as they were doing service to the Adon and fasted, the Ruach HaKodesh said, "Separate unto me Barnabas and Shaul for the work to which I have called them." Then having fasted and prayed, and having laid hands on them, they sent them away. This black prophet, this black teacher, laid hands on Paul and sent him away. He had authority. He had power given to him by Yah. That's what the word says. And we're only interested in what the word of Yah says, because his word will not return to him void. So if from the very beginning, these are the people that participated in the word, and these are the people who were dispersed, know then who is going to round up. It doesn't matter what the world says. You can't stop the work of Yah. You cannot do that. And we're told that Moses, in the book of Hebrews, when he was old, having spent his years up until he was 18, we're told in the book, the Jubilee, and in Yeshayahu, that he was 18 when he realized that he was not an Egyptian. He was not an Egyptian. He was brought, as we know, into Pharaoh's house, mingling and commingling with them, people of the same color as him. Therefore, it was not easy for him to determine who he was, but he realized at 18 years old that he was Hebrew in belief. That's what the word says. You better join me now in the book of Mese, that's the book of Acts, and we will take chapter 21, and let's start at about verse 30. Acts 21, and we will take verse 30. And the entire city was moved, and the people rushed together, seized Shaul, and dragged him out of the Mikdash, and immediately the doors were shut. People are trying to get Paul, to kill him. And while they were seeking to kill him, a report came to the commander of the squad that all Jerusalem was in confusion. The truth that the apostle was speaking was turning the city upside down. And at once he took soldiers and captains and ran down to them, and they, having seen the commander and the soldiers, stopped beating Shaul. Then the commander came near and took him and commanded him to be bound with 2 chains, and was asking who he was and what he had done. And in the crowd some were shouting this and others that, and not being able to ascertain the truth because of the uproar, he commanded him to be taken into the barracks. And when he came to the stairs, he had to be careful by the soldiers because of the violence of the crowd. For a large number of people followed after, crying out, "Away with him!" They wanted to kill him. And as Shaul was about to be led into the barracks, he said to the commander, "Am I allowed to say something to you?" And he said, "Do you know Yahweh'S?" The commander asked him, "Do you know Greek? Do you speak Greek?" Understand what's happening here. Paul, you want to say something, but do you speak Greek? Are you not the Mitzrite? Are you not the Egyptian who some time ago stirred up the revolt and let the 4,000 assassins out into the wilderness? The Apostle Paul is mistaken for an Egyptian because he looked like them. Notice what the man says. Do you speak Greek? It's like looking at a Jamaican and saying to them, do you speak Mandarin? It would be hard. People do speak Mandarin, particularly in these days, but it's not the common thing. It's like looking at the Englishman and say, do you speak Swahili? It's not the done thing. So he's saying to Paul, are you not that Ethiopian? Are you not that Cushite? Again, the word is very clear that these people, these dispersed people, were of color. Come with me to Shemot, and we will take chapter 2, and let's look at verse 15 and 16. And Pharaoh heard of this matter, and he sought to kill Moshe. This is regarding the incident where he had seen one of his Hebrew people fighting with an Egyptian, and he slew him and hit him on the sand like an ostrich. But Moshe fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. And the Cohen of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water, and they filled the troughs to water their father's flock. But the shepherds came and drove them away. Then Moshe stood up and came to their rescue and watered their flock. And they came to Ruel, their father, and he said, how is it that you have come so soon today? And they said, a Mitzrite. A what? An Egyptian. They saw Moses as an Egyptian. Had Moses been any other color, they would not have said that. They saw him as an Egyptian, and he had helped them. So when we talk about who are the remnant, who are the gathered people, so far, the word is letting us know they're not from Europe. They're not. Let's read it again, Isaiah 11:11. And it shall come to pass in that day that Yahweh shall set his hand a second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Amor. We see nobody from Poland, not from Russia, not from England, not from the Caucasus. We don't see that. We don't see that at all. We see in Tehillim, that Psalm 68 and verse 31, princes shall come out of Egypt. Ethiopia shall soon stretch out her hands unto Yah. You can't stop that. When Ethiopia stretches out her hands to Yah, Yah will not meet Ethiopia with a clenched fist. Because he said Ethiopia will one day, according to Zephaniah, bring him an offering. Because the Ark of the Covenant is said to be in Axum. Because by faith, Moshe, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. I know who I am. I'm reading from Hebrews 11, 24 and 25. Choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of Yah than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. Let's stay there. This man here, Moshe, who took dictation from Yah on Mount Sinai, and who at one time was married to a Cushite woman, and was also king of the Cushites, validated in the book of Yeshayahu and reported on by Josephus, the Hebrew historian, that Moshe was king of the Cushites. He said he refused to be called an Egyptian. Why? Light had come into his frontal lobe. He now knew exactly who he was. Baruch chapter 2 and verse 30 says, we, the descendants of slaves, the time will come while we're living in captivity, the land of our captivity, that we will come to realize who we really are, that we are children of Israel. Then, in one voice, perhaps like Moshe, we should be refusing to be called CVE, Baptist, Pentecostal, Seventh-day Adventist, Catholic. I now know who I am. I am an Hebrew. I am an Israelite. I am a follower and a believer in Yeshua. I'm a Shia. There is no other name where a man might be saved. So I am a child of Yah. I refuse to be called anything else. Such was Moshe. He refused to be called. 1 Chronicles chapter 5, 1 to 3. Now the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, for he was the firstborn, but so for as much as he defiled his father's bed, his birthright was given unto the sons of Joseph. His birthright was given to the sons of Joseph. Who are the sons of Joseph? Ephraim and Manasseh, the two North African boys. The birthright, the land, was given to them. That's what the word says. Therefore, as we now look at the treaties being signed and the ceasefire being declared and being negotiated and being appreciated, I think that it would be remiss to look at it outside of the context of this. The land is the birthright. The scepter is for Judah. The ruler is for Judah. But the land, the birthright, is for Joseph's son, who were born in Egypt. That's what the word wants you and I to know. And so Jeremiah in chapter 31, 34 and 35, it says, he promised to keep Israel as a nation as long as the sun and the moon and the stars are in place. He's not going to renege on his promise to Israel, not at all. And he promised to bring back Israel to the land, never to be uprooted again. That's Amos 9, verse 15. We've got to understand all of this. Otherwise, we will continue to allow people who have no business teaching us, doing so, and deceiving us of our birthright. We've got to understand it. And so this morning, we simply wanted to look at the whole thing in its context and to take matters into our own hands, because for far too long we have been misled and misplaced. So a soberly rational sense of understanding now undulates over our frontal lobe. We're better able to understand what is happening. And so, like a gentle breeze, it takes us away from the transactions of the pellucid days of early teachings that they gave us. We can now, from the word of Yah, declare who we really are, and that we are children of light. That's who we are. Yohanan said, I fell at the feet to worship him. That's Revelation 19:10. And he said to me, don't do so, don't do it. I am thy fellow servant and of the brethren that has the testimony of Yeshua. Worship Yah, for the testimony of Yeshua is a spirit of prophecy. The testimony of Yeshua is a spirit of prophecy. And so Revelation chapter 12, Revelation chapter 12 gives us a peep into who the remnant people are. Come with me there. It says that the dragon was wroth with the woman, with the church, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed. Remember, in chapter 12, the seed of the woman was Yeshua, the man-child. And so if we are remnant of that seed, you cannot be anything else but Israel. It was Israel who gave birth to the Messiah. Isaiah tells us that. So if you are a seed of that remnant group, you have to be an Israelite. You can't be denominationally exact. It's one assembly, to which all assemblies denominationally should be connected. But the devil was wroth with the remnant of his seed because why? They keep the commandment and they have the testimony of Yeshua. The testimony of Yeshua is a spirit of prophecy. All prophecies are fulfilled in Yeshua. All. And so, or at least they point to the Messiah. All prophecies. And so most people who call themselves Orthodox in the Hebrew faith, they don't even study the New Testament, which is a testimony of Yeshua, particularly the book of Revelation. And the theology that they pride themselves on is Talmudic Judaism. The rabbis are taught by the Talmud, which were written by rabbis. And in parts of it, it mocks the Messiah. So it's rational to ask the question, how is it that a people who rejected the Messiah reject his testimony, claim to be the remnant of a seed, and were taken there in Palestine and now claiming Jewry? I've presented to you this morning 3 men who were born in Hebrew Jewish families, and they've all testified. Benjamin Friedman, in his Facts are Facts, Arthur Koestler, in his 13 Tribe, and Shlomo Sand, the invention of the Jewish people. And if we may add for good measure, Gamal Abdel Nasser, former president of Egypt, they've all said that today's nation of Israel, based on Khazarian heritage, they're not the Bible's Israel. And so it makes sense for us to turn to Galatians chapter 6 as we bring this to a close, and verse 16. Well, let's read from verse 15 to 17. I'm reading here this time from the chronological Bible. The chronological. Because sometimes we seem to have problem with what Yah's word is saying. 15. For in the Messiah, Yeshua, neither circumcision availeth anything, nor uncircumcision, but a new creature. You cannot externalize Israel. That's what the word is saying. You cannot go on the premise that because your foreskin has been removed and you were born in the land, it doesn't make you an Israelite. You have to be a new creature. One birth is not sufficient. You have to experience the new birth. If you're born once, you will die twice. And if you're born twice, including the new birth, you perhaps may only die once, because some will be alive when he comes. They will never taste death. And as many as walked according to this rule, how many? As many as walked according to this rule, peace be on them and mercy and upon the Israel of Yah. If you walk this way in this life, you become the Israel of Yah, not by birth, but by rebirth. That's what we've been talking about all morning. So that's the remnant of Yah. May we understand that. And may we aspire to become an Israelite, not by birth, but by rebirth in Yeshua. Such we ask. In Yeshua's name I pray. Amen.